Good afternoon, everyone. This is Kim Schmidt, Executive Editor of Farm Equipment Magazine. Welcome to our latest webinar in conjunction with Iron Comps by TractorZoom. Today's presenter is Andy Campbell, Marketing Director for Iron Comps by TractorZoom. He's going to walk us through some of the latest trends of major equipment categories, but also is going to share some tips on how others are finding and selling the right equipment at the right price for their customers. Before he gets into his presentation, just a couple of housekeeping items. On your screen, there's a control panel with a Q&A icon. You can submit questions here at any time during the presentation, and then time permitting, we'll look to answer as many of those questions as possible. And then just a reminder, we are recording today's webinar. In the event that you want to come back and rewatch it or share it with anyone else on your team after the fact. All right, with that, we are ready to get started. Thanks again for joining us, and you can take it away, Andy.
Perfect. Thank you, Kim. And welcome everybody else to TractorZoom Spring Trends and Tools webinar. Like Kim said, my name is Andy Campbell. I do a lot of the marketing and analysis for Iron Comps, again, powered by a lot of the data coming out of TractorZoom. So beyond just the marketing for Iron Comps, I get to analyze and report on used farm equipment data. So we're going to cover a lot of that here today. And then I get to draw on a little bit of my experiences. I help run our family farm up in Northern Iowa as well. So staying close to the farm helps in a little bit of how does this relate to your customers. And I had a chance to go through one of the registration reports for this webinar, and this has probably got to be one of the most diverse crowds that we've seen. Certainly great representation between OEMs, dealers, equipment financiers, some farmers. And so with all this brain power out there, I want some good questions to come out of it. And I know not all questions might come during the webinar, but they might come in discussion afterwards. So I'm including my contact information on here now. If you get a chance or do take a chance, just write down my email address now. There's going to be a couple points when you're going to be wanting a little bit more information. If you email me, I promise I'll get back to you in a day, and then we can pick up the conversation and probably go a little deeper there. Okay, so what are we covering today, and essentially why? So, like all of our webinars that we do, we're going to start with the source of data. It's pulling from TractorZoom, but it's important that you know where the quality information is coming from, why we focus so much on transparent, relevant, and actionable data. But also, there's a big why in this data. We've talked to plenty of dealers, and a lot of dealers tell us, I can't market, I can't value what I don't have. And there's a special instance about today's market and some tools that we have here at Iron Comps and TractorZoom that can help you fix and address some of those questions. So we're going to go into kind of the meat and potatoes of what we typically do. We're going to go at the high level and look at market trends. We have a new type of graph, actually two of them, that we haven't showcased before. And so I'll introduce those to you. We'll spend a little bit of time at looking at the entire market and then any nuances that we're seeing there before we dive down into the categories. And so this will be row crop tractors. We can spend some time on combines, self-propelled sprayers, planters, and actually taking a nuanced look at balers. And don't typically spend a lot of time on balers, but for a couple of reasons, I had a manufacturer reach out and ask me about balers the other day. So we included it. And then also, I know that a lot of you have to value things that aren't always inside your comfort zone. Balers certainly aren't within my comfort zone, and they tend to take me a little bit longer to value than the ones I'm more familiar with. So I'm going to show you something that you might not be familiar with, you might not having a lot all the time. How do you address that quickly? Kind of work through it and find what you're looking for. And then finally, down here at the bottom, I'm talking about this increase in the funnel, and whether that's the funnel of finding the equipment that you're looking for or eventually selling the equipment that you're looking for. We have tips and tools sprinkled throughout this webinar on how to address this. Because like I mentioned just a little bit before, you can't really value what you don't have. So how do you increase that funnel, pull in more equipment so you can work with it, and then also in these times, pull in more customers so you can increase your market share. Okay, so focusing on the data quality, and a lot of you know this from past webinars that we've given, but I'm going to update you a little bit on the source of data. It does all come from TractorZoom. And so we work with over 500 auctioneers from across North America, comprising about 85% of the North American auction market. We also work with over 1,000 dealer locations. I think we're up to about 57 different dealer groups from across North America. to pull in dealer listing data. So we have those two bookends of data to showcase for you today for also you can use in Iron Comps. And TractorZoom, historically has been known for accurate, transparent, real-time values. We've been around for a while, and that's a good reputation that we enjoy. But what we're finding out is a lot of dealers are starting to use TractorZoom and Iron Comps for the volume, the click volume, the volume of equipment on the market. And so we're going to showcase how you can use our products and how you can use this data to see where's equipment that you're looking for, any supply changes that'll help you with turns. So we'll go into that a little bit today too. And that's a different nuance than we've done with other webinars. In terms of the quality of data, and I'm going to just show you a couple things on the screen here, that if we have a particular filter on a graph or whatever, you'll see a filter button, maybe like this greater than $20,000 sale price here, or possibly a horsepower. If there's any filters applied to the data, we try to showcase it like that so you know what subset of data we're looking at. Most of the other data we're looking at, models that are 30 years or less, sold for more than $20,000 until we get to those failures. And then they tend to be like the last 3 to 4 years of sales history. Okay, so this gets to the big why. Why pay attention to this webinar right now? Why focus on these trends, supply values? And this is actually a report out of McKinsey & Company. It's about consumer data, but what they're finding out, there's a quick or a close tie between consumer and B2B marketing data right now. And what this is saying, you can kind of see it on that second line there, is that during COVID, during the supply chain issues, this is a time of chaos, obviously, for a lot. And a lot of people that used to have tight buying habits that were very routine are breaking those. They're trying out different brands. They're trying different methods. And this is a common thing that you'll see within marketing. I used to teach marketing for a while. And this is something that we discuss in our upper level marketing classes, that during times of chaos, people will become brand switchers. When things are steady, brand loyalty is key. But when times change, you'll get this brand switching that happens. And then once things steady up, then people re-cement their behaviors. This is why marketers spend so much on college grads, expecting mothers, new home buyers. And so the reason why I bring this particular study up and showcase it to you is, even though you might be short on equipment, this is the time right now to go be expanding your market share, catering to new potential customers, and then bring them into the fold to hopefully re-cement them as loyal brand customers, once we transition out of these a little more chaotic times. Okay, now let's get into the data. So here we're going to start on high-level marketing trends. And I said I've got 2 new types of graphs that we haven't showcased in any other webinar before. And this of what you're seeing right here is actually not even Iron Comps data. Any dealer right now can get access to this type of data. So let me show you what it is first, and then we'll go into how you can access it. So this is searches on TractorZoom. And I've sorted it out to just include those 9 different categories of major ag equipment that you can see down at the bottom. And it's just the proportion of searches. So you can see from September till today, what different farmers are searching for, and does that change over time? Now, this is all of TractorZoom, so it's not just your geography or one particular area. But when you look at graphs like this, what you really look for are changes that you might be able to take to your advantage, and then change your marketing habits, change your sales habits to accommodate what the customer, what the farmer is actually looking for. And so it doesn't take a rocket science here to see that there's a major anomaly within the entire graph, and it's that purple section in the lower left. And that's searches for combines. And so on TractorZoom, when we've got tens of thousands of monthly or of active users each week, and so this is a strong representative sample of the market. And what you see down there happening in October are about 4 times the normal average of TractorZoom users searching for combines. And so I don't know if they're contacting you 4 times as much from the field. It might be because they're broke down and they're sick of having to fix on the piece of equipment. But even if they're not contacting you, an insight like this is a good indication that maybe you should be contacting them or making yourself very accessible to having that phone call at that particular time. One other smaller nuance, but still significant, that you might be able to see here in the lower red and yellow and green are the slight bump in planters, self-propelled sprayers, headers that are happening there in December. So I mentioned, a great piece of information there. Even if you're not an IronComp subscriber, any dealer can access that type of information. The dealers that we're partnering with now on dealer listings have access to these dashboards, and they're even more customizable. So really quick, if you don't have that, and you do want those type of insights, plus the opportunity to list all of your equipment on TractorZoom for free. Get my mouse over here. You just go to TractorZoom.com, dealers. You can go to view all the different dealers that we do work with. Like I said, I think we're up to 57 different dealer groups now. But then just go to sign up, 4 or 5 name categories. We'll reach out to you. And it's about that simple. If that's too difficult for you, you have my email that I told you to write down earlier. Just shoot me an email and I'll walk you through this. But then you're able to gain access to the data, and gain access to getting all of your equipment up on TractorZoom for those tens of thousands of viewers. Now, what does this actually look like from a farmer standpoint? And I want to take a second to show you this because it's important so you can understand where those line graphs come from. What are people actually searching for, and what's that experience like? So if a farmer were to come here to TractorZoom, and let's say they're looking for Quas Combine, and they just type that into that homepage that I just showed you, this automatically populates. So it pulls out in the harvesting category, looking for combines, Quas, and let's say this one from Ziegler pops up right away that fits their fancy. They want to click on it, takes them right here. They can read up on it. They can scroll down and look through the pictures. But like I mentioned a little bit earlier, we are a data company and we're focused on helping people make better decisions. And that data helps that happen. We're not interested in making the sale from a dealership standpoint. That's what they do best. And so we want to make sure that, if a farmer is interested in this piece of equipment, that they go directly to a dealer website. With this, then, and some of you, I know there was a couple marketing folks out in the registration list. This is key because when they go here, we know that they clicked, that it's a lead, but the owner of this website, Ziegler in this instance, they own that data. And so it's theirs to remarket to. From a digital marketing standpoint, that's gold. And you own all of that information from that farmer being on that site. So wanted to take a second to show you that's where this data comes from and how come that's key, that we're not owning that data. We're just sending that straight to the dealership. Okay, and then what does the dealer actually get? This is just a quick snapshot of an example dealership dashboard. They can dice up the data any particular way. And then what's really probably most important to a lot of dealerships is just the growth of leads that we're sending every month. We really worked on the user experience in the first few months, and then have been pouring the marketing dollars in it ever since the new year, and it's certainly paying off. So anyways, just want to put a little plug in there that if you're not using this, you should be. You've got the instruction, how I showed you to, or you've got my email address. Email me and ask. Okay, let's get on the second big graph, and I'm going to leave it here for just a second and talk to this one. Even though it's a one graph, there's a lot of data that's baked into this. And this is a index on row crop tractors based on all of our TractorZoom data. And in this case, going back all the way to 2019. Now, this index takes into account hours, horsepower of those row crop tractors, brands, if the brands are significantly different, types of auctions that it's sold at, seasonality. It takes all those into account. And so you don't just get swings if you have maybe lower horsepower or high hour machines going to market. And you don't have to be too far removed from the farm to understand that this is following that commodity market pretty tightly. We really started to see a good rebound in the commodity market right before 2020. And so that's when this started to climb. A lot of you also remember what it was like prior to 2020. And so obviously we know that there's strength and correlation with the commodity market. One other nuance is the kind of the awareness of supply chain issues, even though they might have been brewing for quite a while. Early 2021 started to see a lot of supply chain issues started to show up in the news a little bit more, inflationary talk. And so we started to see a bit of an acceleration on the equipment values there, and they've held those values going forward. Now, this is the first showcase really that we've done on the webinar of this Tractor Zoom Index. We'll continue to update this monthly. But one of the big takeaways from here was a conversation we had with Casey Seymour from 21st Century. He was in talking to our team last week, and he made a mention. He's like, you get one blip in the radar, one change of a data point, it's a blip. If you get two in a row, it's worth paying attention to. But if you get three directional changes months in a row, then it's really something you have to have an action plan for and be ready to enact. So that's one thing that we want to provide with this Tractor Zoom Index, is give people a first look at how the market might be shifting. Okay, so that was a Tractor Zoom Index for row crop tractors. So we're going to slide right into row crop tractors here and then dive into a little bit more detail. So all of the pieces of equipment that I'm going to showcase here, row crop tractors, combines, planters, and sprayers, at least, we're going to have a similar look to this, where we have the values month by month, year over year, showcase at the top, and then volume down below. So like I mentioned early on, that values are important, but really supply might even trump values right now. So you can start to see where the supply is or where it's not. And then I've got hours that I'm going to overlay on this in 1 second. And so I want everybody to be familiar with this. We've got 2020 in light blue, 21 in orange, and then 22, at least the first quarter here, in dark blue. One thing I should mention, in March, you'll see data points from March. I pulled this information yesterday, and so it encompasses probably about 80 to 90% of the month of March. Pretty valid set of data, and so you know it's fairly recent. Now, right away though, because volume, it's a big talking point right now, Q1 of this year compared to Q1 of last year, we are 55% less volume at auction than we were the year prior. That's huge. Last year, when we were looking at volume of row crop tractors, again, last year, remember, was 21. We're comparing to 20. We were a little shy in the summer, July and August, but we rebounded more even than I expected in November and into December. And so we weren't quite sure how this first quarter was going to start off, and now it's apparent that they're not coming to auction. Farmers might not be retiring at the same rate, or they're just holding on to those pieces, afraid that they can't actually get replaced. Now, knowing that, I'm going to throw in the hours as well, and we're going to start to look at the values up here on top. Right away, we did see greater values in December, typically a higher volume month. And with those values, they were over 2020. And that's even despite the hours being a little bit higher on average. So we were estimating roughly about a 30% year over year value increase last December. Now that's cooled off a little bit into this Q1. Granted, you don't have the tax implications now, but here in March, and this is one of the things that I always look for in the graphs, do I have a comparable set of hours down here? So I'm comparing a bit more of apples to apples for year over year, and I do. Down here, it's almost exactly averaging out to be the same as it was March last year. The value up here in March for row crop tractors so far, about 10% higher. And again, these are tractors down here with this filter, less than 6,000 hours. So that subset of tractors that's a number of years old. But I'm going to get into some details here in a second. That's going to allow you to really see late model, low hour tractors and how those have behaved differently than some of the older tractors. Okay. Now, I mentioned the meeting with Casey Seymour, who also runs Moving Iron Podcast, and he really was talking to us about the washout cycle and how challenging that is now for a lot of dealerships and how they think about the fact that they're getting that first, second, third, fourth, maybe fifth cycle trade-in of a tractor and how important that is to the business model and getting those turns. And he made a real quick mention on his correlation between age and hours. He said sometimes he doesn't even look at the hours because it's so consistently, the same age. And so this is more of an educational piece for a lot of the dealers out there, but feel free to take this webinar or screenshot this, share it amongst your dealers. This is over 2,000 tractor models here. And what we're looking at is for tractors here that are 2 years old, coming in at about exactly 1,000 hours. Again, this is on average, but the line matches up pretty well, and it's a good rule of thumb. A 5-year-old tractor's got 2,500, 9-year-old tractor's got 4,000 hours, and a 15-year-old tractor is sitting at about 6,000 hours. Again, on average, put a good rule of thumb and something to kind of gauge maybe your dealership's assumptions against. Okay, now we're moving into these cycles and categories. I've split the categories up between 0 and 1,000, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, and then 5 to 6 is that light blue. And honestly, it looks like something that my daughter drew, but we'll make a little bit more sense of it here when we look at the percent changes year over year. So for each one of those categories, obviously, they're going to change. And in times of inflation, tight supply that we saw, high commodity prices, it's going to grow faster, which we saw in 20 to 21. But not all categories grew at the same rate. And there's many factors for that out there, but which farmers are, at a better position to spend a little bit more of that money. And I wanted to showcase this though, because, from 19 to 20, a relatively, flatter market, except the end of 2020 did see some stronger prices in December. But you got it 5%, these top ones, some nuance, 10%, maybe for these 3,000 to 4,000 hour tractors. Down here, 4 and 5s, saw 1%, 2% growth increase. Everything grew in 20 to 21. This rate was probably one of the slowest of these 2,000 to 3,000 hour tractors. And the most aggressive rate increase were these low hour tractors that we saw from 0 to 1,000. Now, look at 21 to 20. And again, this is only Q1, but it's a solid full 3 months of 22. And what we are seeing is still maybe a stronger than what we in normal times would expect year-over-year growth in a lot of these categories, except for those really low hour tractors. And those continue to outpace the rest of the market. Not to what they did last year. We can't expect that type of price increase to continue and be viable for the farmer. But this is a good nuance to know that if you're valuing equipment or if you're thinking about investing in different pieces of trade-in, they're changing at a different rate, depending on what our range you're looking at. Okay, and I wanted to throw this one in there. This is the last look at row crops before I move into combines. But in this one, I honestly have never seen two flat lines that have been this interesting. And really all it is, though, you've got your dealer from Q4 of last year to Q1 of this year. You've got essentially the margin spread on average for this very tight range of hours. And I had to bring in the range really tight. Otherwise, you've got big nuances that will throw averages off. And so we're just looking at 1,000 to 1,500 hours on a row crop tractor. And in Q4, there's about 30 auctions were 32% less than what was an average dealer listing price. Now in Q1, that's shrinking slightly, still probably well within the margin of error. But my real point of bringing this up is this something that your dealership is measuring? Because, there are one or two things that are happening. You could be losing margin and essentially a slow margin squeeze, which is one of the worst because you might not even know you're losing money. It could just happen so slowly. So you've got to have some kind of check. And another one is that you're just leaving value on the table. You still might be making a little bit of money. You just might not be optimizing your business. And again, even though these almost look parallel, this auction market has been increasing from Q4 to Q1 at a little shy of 7%. And then the dealership increase is going at about a 5.7%. The number of data points I've taken here is pretty significant. And so, again, two flat lines, but there's a little bit of a story to tell here. The other hidden piece is that auctions almost always, from what I've seen, have dropped from Q4 to Q1 because you have an elevated December. People will spend a lot more in December than they typically do any other time of year. And that's not the case here. So it continued to go up in Q1. I'm interested to see especially what Q2 and then definitely what Q3 will do in terms of this margin squeeze. And in future webinars, we'll be reporting on this. Okay, so if you're interested in understanding, the margin squeeze, what other dealerships are listing at, what the dealership averages is versus the auction average, you can collect a whole lot of data and stay up late last night like I did, or you can actually go within Iron Comps. Now we've got dealer trends baked right into the solution. And so here I've got row crop tractors, but just from a 175 to 300 horse And just for John Deere, you can filter, as you can see on the side there, I've got just the gift rolling. You've got all these different factors that you can filter by. And then so you can start to see where the trends lie and how that compares to those auctions, those green dots. And again, this can be whittled down to just your area of influence, or it can be, nationwide. And so we've got a lot of dealers that are using this to really check their pricing, their values. And we have, and again, this gets to one of the things I mentioned earlier, we've got some other pretty savvy dealers that looked at this and they're just interested in their AOR. They're interested in this from a supply standpoint and saying, I want to see what's in the market. And here I've got a Case 300 horsepower front wheel drive tractor. And you can see how tight the supply is. Throughout the history of this back to October, there were not many of these on the market. And again, this is a kind of a dealer hack that we've learned from our users. They're actually watching individual pieces of equipment and how long they stay on the market for what price. You can see here by this straight line right across here that there was a row crop tractor for $295,000 that sat on the market from January to March 16th before it eventually sold. There was another one. This dropped down to about $255,000. This is a screenshot here, but it's live. I won't tell you the price. And you could see when that other piece of equipment came on, that I think was eventually priced at like a $230,000, it sold within 2 days. And so you can see that flip on the radar. And so you get to an idea, you look historically to see when pieces move at what price, and within your area of responsibility, you get to see supply that's out there too. And competitively, or if you're looking for other farmers, this is a great piece of information to be able to tell how tight is the supply. And if it is tight, where can you find it? And where has it been selling? Okay, on to combines. So getting back to the tried and true that I mentioned earlier, and a couple things. Let's start in December really quick so we can talk about how this year finished up. The volume was down. We saw it down last year in August. And again, we saw it down significantly in December. And then, now again, I'm sticking down here in the volume piece. That's concerning enough that you start to see the combines not show up. And granted, 2020 was a pretty heavy combine summer. But to see those two, and now you get to March. And while March is not a big selling month, to see the third potential sales season in auctions essentially underperform, if you want to call it that, under supply, that's really concerning. For me as a farmer, if we have any issues in our combine, we're probably going to be fixing it ourselves. Do we have the supply, do we have the parts? Because we are not going to be able to get another combine. So I really think you're going to see this tight supply. It's going to be hard to move this out of the system for some time. The supply is tighter than any other equipment category that I've seen. Now, that being said, we're looking up here at values, and I'm going to click forward so we can start to look at these hours, average hours month to month. And both February and March are 36% above where they were a year ago. Now, one of the reasons why I threw in the hours here is because, but we can see that 2022 hours are less than 21. So we'd expect a higher price. Now, within Iron Comps and just the plethora of clean data that we have, I can run a regression on that and say that this shortage of hours still only accounts for maybe like a 6 to 8% price change. And so these true values here in February and March is really showing about a 28 to 30% price premium over this time last year, hours taken into consideration. So take that for what you will. But the main takeaway here on the combines is the supply is really short, shorter than what we've seen for other pieces of equipment. Now, when Casey came in and talked to us about the washout cycle, we did it for combines as well. And so, again, not sure how everybody else splits up their cycles, but 0 to 5, 5 to 10, or 5 to 1,000, 1,500 to 2,000 to 2,500 to 3 are the three different color schemes here. And similar to my daughter's drawing on the other one, I connected the dots. And what we have here, really consistently looking at 19 to 20 and then into 21, that the price increases were consistent with the market. Didn't really depend a lot on what hour of combine you have. Now, at least in Q1 of 22, that's starting to differentiate itself. And it's those low hour combines, if they come to market, are bringing such a premium. And again, a lot of the dealers out there probably know, because you're closer to the ground, closer to the large farmers that are willing to pay that price than I am. But they're probably sitting in a good scenario where last year was good and the potential for this year's harvest is potentially phenomenal, and they can't go without having a combine. So that would be my interpretation of what might be happening there. But again, like row crop tractors, it's important to know that these categories aren't growing at the same rate. One thing that we did that I did differently in this look than I did for row crop tractors, I took a look at the past 3 years, and of these different cycles, color stayed the same, group stayed the same, but I looked to see how the volume changed for these different categories. And so for the 1,500 to 2,000 hour, and again, these are SEP hour combines, we saw that drop about 25% from the volume. If you remember way back to the first combine graph that I showed you, we saw a reduced volume. We continue to see reduced volume in 22, but it's really those low hour late model machines that we're seeing that significant decrease in supply. If you combine 0, 5, and 5 to 1,000, so essentially everything less than 1,000 hours, that's seen about a 50% volume decrease from 2020 to 2021. Okay, let's get into planters here a little bit. Planters, love them, and I hate it dicing them up because there's just so many nuances on the rows, on the options, high speed, fill, just how you have every little attachment. It's really hard to find clear data that's going to tell you directionally how these are doing. One piece of information is essentially the width in the rows that you can dice up data on. And looking at this, and I've done about 3 or 4 different blog pieces that are on our Iron Comps and Tractor Zoom blog that look at planters. And we saw this, it was pretty clear last year that your larger planters, 36 row, certainly your 48, your 24 row, they were going for a premium. And you can see that here. I don't need to draw the lines for you on this one to see the significant growth of this 36 row planter here in gold. If you look at your 24, you've got a good growth in 20 to 21. But now actually what we're seeing in a little bit in 22 is that 16 row planters and 31 row planters. Again, 16 are the orange, 31 are the kind of the purple. They're growing at a strong rate. And last year, even when I did an analysis, it was everything less than a 24 row was not growing at an accelerated pace. And now this is really the first time that I've seen these 16 row planters kind of take off. So it'll be interesting to continue to watch that. Again, the volume is fairly low in these first few quarters, largely because though, I think I'm jumping the gun here because now I want to show you the volume. There's just not a lot out there. Again, these are the past few years. We've seen values drop a lot, but I think that's actually because there's just not a lot of high-speed, quality, large planters on the market to bring those average values up. And again, this is probably something that a lot of dealers out there have seen. I'm not telling you anything new, that the planters that are probably sitting on your lots are not the highly customized one, probably not the high-speed ones. Those are probably already taken. Okay, let's go and talk about sprayers. Another one with some interesting nuances in it because, again, sprayers, at least in the past, you could substitute out a pull-behind sprayer. Farmers already have a tractor. So from an economic behavioral standpoint, it was always an interesting case study because there is a cheaper substitute. But when times are good, people want a pull-behind sprayer. They want a self-propelled sprayer. Now, there's a lot of advantages that you can do with that, spraying later, faster, and all those things. And so I'm going to get into a couple of those nuances here in a second. But because it was an easy substitute, I was really skeptical in most of 21 if we would see these sustained higher prices for self-propelled sprayers. And so let's look up here at the auction. Click on the correct screen here. These average auction values by month, and really 21 just tied so close to 2020 until December hit. Now, again, a little bit of that could be because farmers had that disposable income and they really wanted to take advantage of the tax breaks. And so that drives a lot right there. At least it's in consideration for driving some of it. The volume was down slightly, but this is still where I was a little skeptical until Q1 of this year. Now look how many fewer sprayers are on the market through January, February, and March of this year compared to last. About 50% of the volume of sprayers through what should be prime auction selling season for self-propelled sprayers. We still have April to go. We'll see what that month brings, but at the trend that this is going, I fully expect self-propelled sprayers to be sitting somewhere down here in terms of volume. It's maybe not 50% less than what we saw in April last year, but suppressed. Values though, and I'm going to click here so we can really get this our comparison, so we know at least if we're comparing apples to apples. It's a little all over the board. Values dropped in March, but there were considerably higher hour sprayers in the market. Again, this could be like planters where we're not seeing as much quality equipment hit the market, and therefore it's dropping. That could be part of the story here. There's enough nuances with sprayers you can't necessarily take a quick snapshot of the market and through a crystal ball tell you exactly what's happening. But what we can say, the supply is extremely tight on these. And again, you might be in a scenario where no farmer wants to fall without one. And so they're not taking any to market. They're afraid they can't get the trade. Okay, and now I want to hit on balers really quick. And again, like I said, balers are certainly not my forte. I did not grow up on a forage farm. And so one of the reasons why, this is outside my comfort zone and I wanted to pick this is because we actually talked to quite a few of our partners and they all said the same thing, that they can do 80% of their job pretty quickly because they can look in their internal system and they've had a sale. It's a close comparable and they're good. What they'll spend 80% of their time on is maybe just that 20% of trade-ins or things that they need to value that they're not familiar with at all. And again, the balers, that's me. And let's first look at the values, the volume, and then obviously not the hours on these. But then I'm going to take you into the tool and show you a little bit of how you can deal with opportunities like these balers. So first of all, for the values by month, the forage market hasn't been hit and isn't quite influenced directly like the commodity markets. And so again, I'm pulling things into quarters because the volume of round balers is not nearly as significant as you might see for tractors and combines. And so you'll get nuances if you just look at this on a month-by-month basis. But what you're really seeing here is, again, you do have higher values from here as of late. So in Q4 21 was over 2020, even though there was significantly higher volume. So the volume doesn't seem to be gone on these balers, but they're still exacting a slightly higher value at auction. Now you look at this data point here in 2022, seems to be coming in slightly less than it did in 21. I wouldn't say that that's the market necessarily down. The biggest reason is probably because the volume is just so low, but it's traditionally low in Q1. And so you hate to rest all your reasoning on a month that's got a low data point, the time period that does. So you usually want to look at these selling seasons that have greater sales volume and base your decisions on. Now, one of the other reasons why I brought up round balers is because we've had, again, this is another tool and a hack that some of our dealers have used, and it's brilliant, and we can't really take the credit for it. It's a dealer that was using it and gaining great customer relationships out of it. He had customers that were looking for certain pieces of equipment. He didn't have them on a lot. No one does. But he was actually utilizing our TractorZoom.com to save him a ton of time and help his customer out. And what he'd do is he would, again, go to the TractorZoom homepage. And up here is where I showed you earlier how you can get signed up for dealer listings. But this is how farmers use it. So he went in, typed in a Vermeer 504 baler that was being looked for. to smaller baler, typically not seen here in the Midwest, more on the Eastern Coast with smaller roadways. And with that, got in here and at the time didn't see any results. And so if you're looking for something so nuanced that we might not have it currently coming up for auction, or if there's no dealers with it, you might get a screen like this. But what he was doing, and you can even do this if there are results, he would type in Vermeer 504 and you say the search. Go in and says his search is a Vermeer 504. You can't quite see it in my shot up there, but I'm signed in and confirmed it. And what that actually would do to him, he was saving dozens of searches, and it would send him email alerts whenever on a Monday, whenever one was coming up for auction soon. And so he could bid on it and see if he could help his customer out and work on his turns and building up his inventory, or if one was at another dealership, also would alert. And so again, he was using the system. We didn't intend for it to really help dealers at the time. And now we're seeing more and more dealers start to use this. Just again, quick email registration, and he's got alerts that constantly roll him. He's not spending time searching through sites. And so again, I know supply is such a big issue that we wanted to share that. And it's tools out there. Again, it's obviously free. Just save a search and it alerts you to your inbox. And you do that. Okay, I want to sum up a little bit of the data and the highlights that we hit on. Row crop tractors, those low hour values are up more than the call them the mid-range values, anything from 2,000 and higher. But the low hour values were up 7, maybe even up to 17% for those 0 to 500 to 1,000 hour tractors. Combines, similar story. Step hours that are less than 1,000, those step hour values are up to as much as 20%. As you grow in step hours, that's going to come down considerably. And probably the biggest story within combines is supply is down significantly, it's 40%. Really be looking here at this next month, but especially early indicators into the big summer sales season for what combines are going to do. But every indication I've seen so far is this supply in combines is fairly detrimental, and it's going to be a little bit longer lasting. Sprayers and planters. So planters, everything greater than 24 row, obviously, is scarce, but it's those quality high-speed planters that are going at the premium. I didn't mention this at the time, but we had a planter that was not a high-speed planter. We saw the accelerated, the elevated values. It was I think the 1770 NT that we were trying to sell. We thought we could also get the price premium. We couldn't. We ended up selling it at auction for, I think, maybe like $3,000 or $4,000, what we had estimated it for, but not the 20% higher. Again, but it wasn't the high speed precision planter that people were looking for. And then on the sprayers, there's a short supply, yes, but these values are really varying. It's not as consistently strong on the values that we're seeing with the combines and tractors. One nuance on the sprayers, and I would love to hear some of the people listening in on this webinar. I'd love to get your feedback on anything that you saw. But on the sprayers, one theory that's been tossed around is because the See and Spray technology is getting within sight, within range. But there's technicalities that maybe some of the existing self-propelled sprayers might not be able to be adapted and retrofitted to handle that type of technology, that there's farmers or maybe even dealers that are concerned about not getting stuck with old stock, non-compatible stock when this technology does hit the market. Again, just some talk that we've heard, and I'd be really interested. Shoot me the email that you have. Let me know your thoughts on that. And again, if you have other thoughts on anything else within this webinar, shoot it to me. I'll hop on a call. We can discuss and go back and forth and dice up data. One of the major takeaways for this webinar, though, is take the time to grow your market share. Chaos is when people change their buying behaviors. Certainly times of chaos right now. And for TractorZoom dealer listings, why not? Because there's no cost to you. Sign up takes just minutes. We do all the heavy lifting in terms of pulling in the dealer data, and there's no continued work on the dealer standpoint, except that you get reports of views where people are looking at your equipment, what equipment they're looking at, and then you get to also have that marketing, those marketing leads and that marketing data to remarket for it. So stuff is golden. Don't pass this situation up. Either email me or you can always reach out. I've got a contact list coming up here in a second of other people on our team that you can reach out for and reach out to sign up for that. Huge thanks to our dealer listing partners, though. We've got, and I apologize, I couldn't get everybody on one screen at one time, but it's because of them, because of the feedback that we get from them, because of their listening and agreement with us, that we're able to do what we do. And yeah, we're humbly pleased to be able to work with such a phenomenal group of dealers. And we're just happy to help. So I'd love to have any questions. I see there's a couple in the chat, a couple in the Q&A that have popped up, and I know Kim's going to moderate those, I believe. If you have any questions that you want to ask us directly, like I said, you've got my email, you've got my phone, you can shoot me a text now. Or we have Tyler here. He knows a lot more about Iron Comps and how dealers are leveraging this information to increase their profitability. He's a fantastic resource, and I know he'll get back to you in an instant. So certainly, if you're interested in the Iron Comps product, even to see how it might work for your dealership, no strings attached, shoot him an email, give him a call. We can handle that for you. Like I said, you can also email me or just go sign up in yourself. Like I said, 5 steps, not too difficult to do. And I think now would be a good time, maybe, Kim, I can let you moderate some of the questions and I'll see what I can answer.
All right, well, you do have a few. These first two go back to the very beginning with the row crop tractor charts you showed. The first one is when it said 55% less row crop tractors, is that the correct number that you said? That 55%?
Want to make sure that the way this guy.
It came in around, yeah.
Yeah, the quantity, this is year over year, Q1 at auctions, that we saw 55% less row crop tractors at auction between January, February, and March 2022 versus the year prior in 21.
Okay. And then the next question was on the spread of low-houred row crop tractors, is that dealer listing price or dealer selling price?
Good point. I think we're probably talking about this.
Yeah.
So yes, top graph or top line, dealer listing price.
Okay.
Yep. And one important nuance, again, dealerships know how they manage this on their listing price. But take this into consideration that from a listing price right now, and a lot of the dealerships that I've talked to, both as in my position here at Iron Comps and Tractors, as well as being a farmer, a lot of times the listing price is a sales price. Not always, because there's so many intricacies that go into developing relationships and making good deals with farmers as well. But it's we've heard this many times. I've heard it personally. If you're not interested in the price, then there's 5 or 6 more people that are. But yeah, that top line is dealer list price.
Okay. And then our next question, how much work falls on the dealer to list their inventory on your site?
Good question. Very little, if any. So most of it, doesn't even fall on me. It's Tyler does it. No, it's about those 4 steps of saying, first name, last name, dealership. And then I've seen dealers agree to, they want to put the stuff on the site and their equipment is on the site in just a matter of a couple of days. And all they're doing is just essentially having a conversation on the phone and that's it. Our tech team is phenomenal and they do all the back end work and there's not the updating. There's nothing you need to really touch except see the leads come in and see your dashboard. So yeah, the onboarding process is literally measured probably in minutes. And then our tech team works on it in a couple of days. So fairly easy.
So are dealers then sending their inventory over to you, or is it?
Yeah, if it's a John Deere dealer, we might get an XML feed, and then it's a direct connection from there. Depending on what kind of site the dealer has their information on, our tech team works to have a solution that fits for their nuance. There's some dealerships that have a kind of a custom built site, and then we have to work with to learn what the back end of the system is. But no, we want to make it as easy as possible for the dealerships. And that's why I think why we're gaining so many dealerships so fast is because it's once they learn that it's a no-brainer, and there's very little work, that, like I said, it becomes a no-brainer, and then it just flows our way. There's not the legwork for them to maintain and to manage it in and out every week. They don't have the time for that.
Okay. And then that is all that's come in so far. But we do have some time. If anyone else has any more questions, you can just use that little Q&A box at the bottom of your screen.
Great questions, though.
How often are you guys polling and analyzing the data? Are you doing it, is it monthly? Are you looking at it more frequently than that?
It depends on what data. Like I said, I was pulling some of this stuff like 11 o'clock last night, watched some of the NCAA games, and then was doing this. But for the trends and even the stuff that our clients pull, let's see if I can. Like this information that's baked right within IronComps, this is instantaneous from the previous day reported. But I mean, you're not waiting a quarter, you're not waiting a month for it to get uploaded. A lot of our clients will go in here and they've got their different trends that they want to check, the different pieces of equipment they want to keep tabs on. And so this is automatically connected to the TractorZoom system. So this is an instantaneous pulled all the time. And we look at these trends daily. Now, the stuff that I pull, like the TZ index that I showed earlier for the tractors, I'll do that once a month just to make sure I have a big enough data set. And then I run a regression on that set of data because I want to take into account things like the make model combinations of how many case versus Deere versus Versatile were sold, dealership auctions, all that stuff goes in there. And so I'll do that in essentially a month batch on the index.
And then how are dealers using the list price data in their operations?
Good. So, some of them will use it as a comparison just to judge how well or how they're priced within, make model combinations across the country. And honestly, there's a lot of dealers now that are getting a lot more savvy on this dealer list price. They'll look at it from a supply standpoint. And I would say the more and more that are finding out about it with today's market, a lot of them are using it to understand supply and to grow their market share within their area of responsibility. And so if I'm answering the question right, I think we might have intended the tool to be used mostly from an evaluation standpoint. And I think what's being used the most is from a supply standpoint and to really understand what's out there, how quickly certain prices move, and to see competitively what else is in their area that they can either pull from, buy, or maybe have the one and only that's within a 200-mile radius.
All right. Well, it looks like that is the end of our questions. So we will wrap things up. Thank you everyone for joining us for today's presentation. And like I said earlier, we'll have a video replay of the webinar up on the Farm Equipment website in case you want to go back and review it or have anyone else at the dealership watch it as well. Watch your email and the Farm Equipment newsletter for more information on when that's available. On behalf of Andy, TractorZoom, and IronComps, as well as our entire Farm Equipment staff, thank you for joining us. When you leave, there'll be a quick survey. Please feel free to let us know what you thought of the live event and if there's any topics you want us to cover in the future. Thanks again, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.